All right, good morning, everyone. We are going to go ahead and get started. Is everyone able to hear me okay? Excellent. All right, well, my name is Ayla, and I am the Ocean Science Educator for Ocean First Institute. As many of you probably already know, we are an ocean conservation nonprofit based here in Boulder, Colorado, that works to protect the ocean through both research and education. We study amazing animals like rays, and we also talk to the public about the importance of our ocean and how everyone, no matter where they live or their age, can help protect our underwater world. And today we're going to be talking about the shocking lives of electric rays with Dr. Laura Ekstrom. So there's going to be about 20 minutes of presentation followed by 25 minutes or so for questions. And I do encourage anyone either watching in Zoom or joining us on Facebook Live to please submit any questions that you have either in the Q&A box or in the comment section on Facebook, and we will make sure to get to those towards the end of the presentation. So now I'm so excited to introduce Dr. Laura Ekstrom, who is a member of the Ocean First Institute Advisory Board. She completed a postdoctoral fellowship at Mount Holyoke College and is currently an associate professor at Wheaton College in Norton, Massachusetts. She is an active supporter of Women in STEM and a co-founder of Wheaton's Summit for Women in STEM, a one-day conference to highlight, mentor, and connect women in STEM across New England. Dr. Ekstrom's research experience includes elasmobranchs like sharks and skates and rays, behavior, physiology, and biomechanics. She has extensive experience in elasmobranch husbandry, and her current work includes investigations into the mineralization of elasmobranch skeletons, patterns of locomotion in benthic rays, and the biomechanics of body stabilization. And today she's going to be talking to us about electric rays. I'm also excited to be joined today by Dr. Mickey. She is our director here at Ocean First Institute and one of the top shark experts in the world. Her work has been covered by the BBC, National Geographic, and Discovery Channel Shark Week, and she will be joining me in this conversation with Dr. Ekstrom and in the Q&A section at the end. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Ekstrom to teach us all about the shocking lives of electric rays.
Thank you, Isla. Thank you, Dr. Mickey. What a treat to be able to join you guys today and talk about some of the coolest animals out there, the electric rays. So let's see here. How's it looking?
Looks
perfect. All right.
Looks great.
So, electric rays. What the heck? Animals that can generate electricity. I'm going to take it back a little bit first and talk about the group of animals that the electric rays are in, and that's the sharks, skates, and rays. Those are the elasmobranch fishes, right? And probably a lot of you know that, like this shark is showing you right now, all those little dots on the rostrum, on the nose, that they can detect electricity, right? So electricity, we need to really take it back to be able to talk about these electric rays a little bit better. What we're talking about when we talk about the sharks and rays that can detect electricity, they're really detecting the flow of an electric charge, or like some bit of electricity or some bit of negative charge moving from one place to the other. That's all electricity is, just a movement of negative charge from one place to another. And these animals can detect that. Okay, so why is that useful? It's useful because all of us as animals make electricity by moving these little charged particles around. And that's electricity, right? The little particles that we move around are ions. So like when you're drinking a Gatorade or whatever, you think of the potassium and sodium in there. Those are all ions, right? And we use those ions for most of the signaling that we do in our body. So over here on the left, you can see the nervous system with the brain and all your nerves coming off of that spinal cord. Little bits of ions are moving in and out along those nerves so that a signal can travel from your brain to your big toe and say, hey, move that big toe. You just stepped on a rock. Muscles are also controlled by this electrical impulse. So little changes of moving ions in and out of a cell, and that's all it is, just a little molecule moving in or out of a cell. And it's going to make it either more positive or more negative, but that's it, just changing the charge. that's how your heart works as well. So when you're looking at an ECG, like you see here on the right, I think it's the right, that's what you're looking at. You're seeing electricity. You're seeing the charge of your cells changing, of your heart cells. I don't know if any of you guys do this, but there's a big thing now about electrical stimulation for working out and for your muscles, so that when you're training or after you're training, you can send electricity to your muscles and those muscles will contract, because that is a signal, right? It's just a tiny signal of moving those little ions in and out. The muscle cell feels that little change in charge, and then it does its thing, right? So these are tiny bits of electricity that those elasmobranchs, those shark skates and rays, they're all detecting that tiny bit of electricity changing. And again, it's just like signaling. So it does the tiny signal and it's done. It goes back to how everything used to be. Electric rays, on the other hand.
Now you want, watch out for the electric numb ray. Not only
the electric ray has taken this method of how we can change charge in our cells, and instead of making it really tiny or just a really small quick thing, it can make huge charges out of this. It can make huge electric organ discharges like this right here that just jumped over a fish, discharging tons of electricity on that fish, so much so that the muscles in that fish respond, contract, the backbone of that fish probably breaks, the heart that's used to receiving signals that are electric is gonna go all out of whack, right? And the heart is gonna stop, so it'll kill that animal, it'll kill that ray. Where does it come from and how do they do it? So in an electric ray, here we have one called the lesser electric ray. Outlined in blue here is where you would find these electric organs. So they're kidney shaped, there's one on either side, you can kind of see them, and it's just skin, electric organ, and skin. So there is nothing in the way of that electricity that it can generate there. And when you peel that skin back and actually look at the organ, it looks like this honeycomb kind of thing, where all of those little honeycomb bits that you see are individual cells. And if you look at this yellow drawing on the far side, those yellow cells are all stacked up on top of each other. So you can have hundreds of these cells making up the area of your electric organ. And then those cells can be stacked thousands upon themselves. So it can be hundreds or thousands depending on how big that ray is. And that's going to adjust, that's going to change how much electricity or how big that shock is. So a good analogy for understanding electricity is to think about water. And there's two things we really think about, the voltage and the current, or the amperage. So here you have water flowing through a pipe. If the pipe is closed and the water is being sent through, that's going to be high pressure, right? That's what we call the voltage, the pressure of the water. But since that what's that thing called? Since that knob is closed, there's lots of pressure, but there's no actual flow out to the other side. So there's no current. The amps of that would be 0. In the bottom picture there, you've released the valve. Your pressure is going to be decreased then a little bit because you've released the valve. So that voltage is going to be moving with the current or as a current. And you see the water flowing out. That's the actual current of electricity. So if you got higher pressure or higher voltage, you would have a more like a harder push of that water, right? Higher current would mean that your opening of your hose would be bigger, right? So you would have like a bigger opening for that water to exit through, or a smaller one. It would be less current or less amperage. And so you can think about that again when we look at these organs, where the bigger the surface area of these organs, the wider the hose, the higher the current. And the taller these stacks of cells, these electrocytes, the higher your voltage or the higher the pressure of electricity. So it really seems to depend on how big that ray is for how much electricity you're going to get out in terms of the voltage, which is like how strong that push is, and the current, which is how big that push of electricity is out of the animal. This arrangement might look familiar because this is actually, through electric rays, is actually how we got the idea of batteries. So Volta, obviously you all recognize Volta, back in the 1700s, early 1800s, was looking at electric rays and looked at the organs and saw how they were stacked. Those little cells were stacked on top of each other, and that it seemed like there was a difference in charge generated at each single little cell. And the more of those cells that were stacked on top of each other, the more additional voltage you could get created. Just like when you have batteries stacked up on top of each other in your flashlight, right? On here on the left. You can get more electrons moving that way. You can also connect them, just like how how that honeycomb appearance is for those electric organs, right? Those little stacks can all be connected, and so you can increase the amperage, you can increase the current. So Volta stole this battery idea from electric rays, so think an electric ray the next time you use anything battery operated. All right, so who are the electric rays? Enough of that. Who are the electric rays? They're all rays that live in the order Torpediniformes. There are 4 families of electric ray within this order, and then another bizarre family that's also in here that's not electric. Anyway, we have Hypnidae, who are coffin rays. They're exclusively found around Australia. They are called coffin rays because they have really big mouths underneath. So I'm borrowing this from my 5-year-old Sarah. So here's the mouth on the rays, right, underneath. The mouth is really big underneath for these coffin rays. They can gulp a fish easily, and when that fish is in the body, it looks like they're a little coffin rays. All right, there's also numb fishes, the Narcinidae family. There are around 31 species in this family, including the lesser electric ray, which I've done most of my work on, and then crazy benthobatis rays, which are blind, and you find them in really deep waters. These electric rays, you can find them pretty much in any marine water. Deep, like these blind ones. These sleeper rays are found anywhere from shallow to deep. This top guy here, this sleeper ray in the Narcidae family, I see a little ruler there showing he's only 10 something. Those are centimeters. Beautiful metric centimeters. This is possibly the smallest elasmobranch out there. Very cute sleeper ray. No dorsal fins, but a very cute sleeper ray, and then a 1 fin ray underneath it. The last family of electric rays are the Torpedinidae, and these are probably ones that you may have thought of when you think about electric rays. If you think about electric rays, you should from now on think about electric rays. They grow to be the biggest. So you've got these beautiful oscillated electric rays or marbled ones. You also have the really huge Pacific electric ray. I love this picture of the underside where you can see the outline of those kidney-shaped electric organs. And then the absolute largest electric ray is the Atlantic ray, the Atlantic torpedo ray. And this video kind of cracks me up for a couple of reasons. One, because it shows how desperate people are. I'm in Massachusetts right here. This is taken off from Massachusetts to get in the water and go diving. Look how terrible that diving is. Anyway, so it's a terrible video, but it shows the first thing I think is hilarious about this is that the ray, when it's approached, it just turns around and looks at the diver like, what? You got something for me? You don't bother me one bit, right? These rays have massive electric organs in them. They can produce up to 200 or 220 volts of electricity, probably 2.5 amps or so. That can shock you enough that it can render you unconscious as a human, right? It could mess with your electrical impulses in your heart, that it could leave you unconscious. And this is how we've had some diver fatalities. If you're diving, certainly you don't want to be left unconscious. All right, so that's our large electric ray. But what you shocking about, Willis? Why are these electric rays, why have we evolved these crazy organs, right? At the very beginning, we saw that electric ray eat the fish. We haven't seen anything else yet. So we know that it's for predation in some of these rays, but definitely for defense. Unfortunately, you can Google and see a fair number of these videos where people kind of antagonize an electric ray, and then you can see it attack. So you can see electric rays attacking divers like these guys here. So they're going to be releasing their electricity and shocking these guys so that they can tell them to go away. They have very few natural predators in the wild. This is part of the work that I did. So for my PhD research, we were doing looking at how these lesser electric waves were using their electricity. So these are gloves that I built that are rubber gloves, and on that one with the right hand with the white circle part on it there, I have recording electrodes. So I could record how intense that electric organ discharge was, how long it was, what frequencies it was. So I'm hoping that you can hear right now the discharge sounds. Oh, hold on here. Oh. Hold on here. You're going to hear a little spark. Those little spark-like sounding things are the electric. Very angry little ray. So the higher that the pitch of those little bursts sounded means that the higher the frequency was. So they had really high frequency in some cases, upwards of 200 or so hertz, right? And lower in the smaller rays, but in the adults, pretty big. All right, so here was that part. We were able to test small neonate 2-day-old born electric rays, lesser electric rays. Even they were using their electric organs for defense. And I put this Beavis and Butthead up here so that you can see what it basically felt like. The adults, it really hurt when, if you were by chance accidentally getting shocked by them. For the small guys, when you were touching them and their shocks came out, they produce a shock of around 8 volts. The organs grow as the animal grows. So it basically feels like the same kind of buzzing. I don't know how many of you have done this. I have stuck a 9-volt battery on your tongue, like Beavis here. That's basically what it feels like. So even those guys, they're producing their electric defenses. And again, we saw this predation event, but let's see it again, because that's a lot of fun to watch. So they are ambush predators. They can jump over the fish, stun them, paralyze them, kill them, and then gobble them up in their large mouths. For some of these rays. Not always though. So the other part of some of my research was looking at these other kinds of rays, these lesser electric rays. They're not eating big fish, they're eating small worms. So this is kinematic work from Dean and Moda. And you can see their tiny straw-like mouths just jutting into the sand, grabbing those worms out of the sand. It doesn't seem like something that really requires that much weaponry to do. And as it turned out, they never shocked when we set up these feeding trials with them. So we found that these guys never really used their electricity for feeding, just for defense. Maybe they're using it for communication. So they also have these small electric organs, these lesser electric ray does, I should say, not all species. They have these small electric organs hiding here in the yellow. We tried to get recordings from them. Potentially there's communication going on using the small electric organs. Skates also have these tiny electric organs. There's potential communication going on with them, but hey, that door's still wide open. So one of you guys out there needs to really solve this riddle of what those small accessory electric organs are. Some of the cool things about electric organs as well is the fact that their bodies are so messed up because of these electric organs. So that's a ridiculous animation on top, right? Of course. So those pectoral fins no longer have muscle that you can use, right? The pectoral fins are, that real estate is taken up with these huge electric organs. And so they don't really swim like regular rays do. They don't really flutter or send these nice undulations down their pectoral fins or even wave them up and down like the mantas. Instead, these rays end up having these huge caudal tails, caudal fins on their tails, big dorsal fins on the tails, and they swing them back and forth just like a shark does. The other thing that we found that they can do, or that they do in terms of locomotion and their adaptation for this locomotion, is they just glide a whole lot. They're pretty lazy looking, and why not? You don't have to really get away from anything. You've got electric organs. So there's a lot of this gliding activity that they do, and they're able to do it really efficiently because if you look at their body, it's kind of curved on the top and more flattened on the bottom. Sort of like an airplane wing that's curved on the top and flat on the bottom. And this shape is called a hydrofoil. It's going to create something called lift, which is basically like a suction pulling that wing or pulling that body in the electric rays case upwards, right? So if it's just gliding in water forward, if it gives it a little push with its tail, it can then just keep moving in that water and not sink down to the bottom because of the shape of the body. The shape of the body is going to allow for this lift or this pull of the body coming up. And it's because of faster air or faster water flowing on the top. Lord, don't tell my kid I'm ripping her papers. I'll rip this one. I can show you that. It's really easiest thing. You don't even have to have the shape. You just have to have faster flowing fluid on the top versus the bottom. Lift. That's it. It's sucking it up. So the ray doesn't have to do anything to try to keep itself in the water column or try to keep itself from not falling to the bottom. It's going to just, because of the shape of its body, can produce lift. If you actually move the body so that it's facing down now, the lift is going to be pulling you up, but also a little bit forwards. So so you can often find videos of these guys with their bodies tilted forward, and they just are carried forward, and also it stops them from sinking really quickly. So really cool stuff. The other locomotor adaptation is that they use their pelvic fins a lot. So these fins right behind the pectoral disc, the main body disc here, they're really robust, have really strong skeletal elements in them, and they push off the bottom, just like they're sort of either walking or like pushing along on a skateboard, and they push their bodies along. There's really just too much to talk about for electric rays. And I'm thrilled that I was able to share just that little bit with you. Thank you for your attention. If you have questions, I'm so happy to answer or try to answer them in the time left. You can also email me. There's my email. And thanks. I will stop sharing my screen now.
Oh, Dr. Ekstrom, that was amazing. Oh my goodness. Thank you so much for sharing all of your incredible research and expertise with us. I think I speak for everyone when I say that was just an incredible learning experience and presentation. So thank you. So we do have a couple questions coming in. And the first one being, people would love to hear a little bit about how you first got inspired by the electric rays and into the field of studying them.
Oh man, so my path is anything but straight. How about that? My path is anything but straight. And when I started grad school, I thought that I was gonna go into like fisheries kind of stuff, figuring out how animals use their home ranges, all this ecology kind of work. Grant funding didn't quite work out the way we thought it was going to work out. I think my advisor didn't know what to do with me. We were sort of treading water, and he sent me off, bless Steve Kajura, he sent me off to a summer course at Friday Harbor Labs in Washington State, run by Dr. Adam Summers and Dr. Beth Brainerd. And it was the functional morphology and ecology of fishes. And I had no interest in, I was like, what are you doing? I don't even know what I'm doing here. And it was there that I started to really get interested in, like, how do animals really work? How does walking actually work? How does swimming actually work? And I remember sitting on the steps with one of my best friends, Mason Dean, who does a lot of biomechanics of stingrays and their skeletons. And he had just finished work on their feeding mechanisms. He's the one that did that crazy jaw protrusion thing with the worms. And I remember him telling me about it, and him telling me how crazy that was, and how crazy these rays are because they do this weird straw thing. And I remember thinking, like, yeah, but they have electric organs. Isn't that crazier? So from there, we got into the behavioral stuff. And it turned out that behavioral stuff then ballooned into kinematic stuff. And the rest is sort of weird, twisted history still.
So cool. Oh my goodness. And the Friday Harbor Labs are certainly a special place for all of us. So very cool. So we have a couple questions coming here in the text chat and Zoom. And again, I encourage anyone who's either listening on Facebook or here in our webinar to please ask your questions. I thought this was a particularly interesting one. When a ray produces that electric charge, does it deplete it in any way?
It does. So it's able to keep that charge going because of the availability of sodium around it. So sodium is a big player in how our nerves work and how our muscles work. If you don't have sodium around to be able to create that movement of ions, you can't do a charge. So as long as that's gone, you're done. Also, the key signaler, the key messenger chemical is acetylcholine. And that also is really critical for these electric organ discharges. So a nerve will be coming to the electric organ to give that initial signal of do a discharge, release that electricity. And that initial signal is through that chemical called acetylcholine. If there's a lack of acetylcholine, then there's no message that can get through, right? The nerve can no longer tell the electric organ to discharge. It's the same thing with muscle fatigue. If you're exercising like crazy and you no longer can hold that muscle anymore, often there can be multiple causes for fatigue, but one of the causes of muscle fatigue is that you've exhausted or you depleted your resources of acetylcholine, and you need to wait for them to get back to be restored. And we see that when we did those little things with the rays, when we held on to them, they would do their discharges, hundreds, but then they would need a break.
Super interesting. Wow, thank you so much. And it's neat to kind of see that parallel between what we experience and what the rays experience. So we have another question coming in through the text chat. Someone wondering if you could tell us a little bit more about the ray that doesn't appear to use its electric capacities, or it shocks for any kind of predation, doesn't shock when it eats. What was that one called? And yeah, how are we kind of studying it? What are some of our other ideas about that ray?
Yeah, those ones, we think it's just defense. So it's Narcine brasiliensis, recently renamed Narcine bancroftii, or maybe not so recently. But they're found in the warmer waters around Florida, down to Brazil, hence brasiliensis. And I think it's just that these rays are so commonly found, like they just stay in the sand, in the muddy sand kind of areas. They won't leave if they don't have to. They'll do like the minimal movement possible in order to find their food. And if it's just as simple as getting a worm out of the ground, you don't really need to do anything for that. You can just jab the ground and get the worm. But if you are needing to defend yourself against a predation attack, then you can use that discharge. So whenever we were grabbing them, those were those rays that eat the worms. And they definitely put out defensive discharges.
Super interesting. We have kind of a follow-up question to that from someone here, wondering to what extent electric rays can use that defensive capacity to actually like hurt or even kill something bigger than themselves, like a shark even. Is that something they can do? Do we know?
Yeah, some of the big rays do. So some of the big rays, like the Pacific rays, have been found with like a 2-foot long mackerel in it whole. The coffin rays have been found with penguins in their stomachs. I mean, it's just ridiculous. Yeah, penguin. So there is, once you've gotten, if that ray is big enough to jump over you and big enough to fit, or that mouth is big enough to, you know, get whatever that animal is into its mouth, it can eat anything, right? Because those discharges are so, are absolutely substantial enough to, if not kill the animal, to at least render it unconscious, so that it's just shooting fish in a barrel.
Dr. Laura, so I think I remember watching you jump off a boat to collect a Braziliensis or Bancroftii in Florida. And I'm wondering if you could tell our viewers how you managed to catch those rays in the wild and what that process was like.
Well, we did it a couple ways. So one, we made a small trawl, because they're so commonly found on the, not so commonly, but because they are found just resting on the substrate or in the sand, hiding in the sand so often, we would have a little trawl and pull it along for really short amounts of time and find them that way. Or, yeah, there was a time in the Keys where we just sort of saw them, right, and went in. And as long as you've got a net that has rubber on the handle, you're gonna be okay. But you definitely want that insulation.
Yeah, and I think I remember you also, during your experiments, you had your gloves on and you had your electrode, but I think I remember water creeping into your glove. I remember hearing you talk about how that felt, and I think you were pretty excited.
Yeah, very exciting. Very, very exciting. And it certainly makes you drop the fish pretty quickly.
Yeah, and could you tell us just a little more? I think one really neat, well, there's two really neat things I wanted to ask you about. The accessory electric organ communication possibilities. What, you know, if you had some money to bet, you know, would you bet that you think that there is a communication role with that accessory electric organ?
I really would. And I got to tell you, to get back to this topic, I've been on biomechanics for so long now. To get back to it, it just makes me want to grab some more rays and do some more experiments with them. You know, skates have been shown to, when they meet a new skate, there have been experiments of basically like introducing a new skate to a skate that has previously been in a tank, and they would sort of lie on top of the other, and then you would get little millivolt recordings of something happening. We had that similar kind of setup of ambient recording of electricity in the tank, and really tried to mimic that or copy that as best as we could. So whenever we had a new ray, we would get it in the tank and just cross our fingers and see what happened. We only one time were able to see the new ray glide in, land on the bottom, and then another ray that had been there come over and plop itself on top of that new ray. And then we saw small millivolt recordings of electricity.
Wow.
So to me, that, I mean, to me, it just tells me that our experimental setup probably wasn't perfect, and that if we could figure out what makes them talk, then maybe they would. So I'm pretty convinced.
And then males and females, do you think there's any relation to that in mating or anything? I guess communication, mating, who knows, right?
Yeah, maybe. It would make a lot of sense, especially since they're buried so much, right? It would make a lot of sense that they would have this other sort of way of communicating.
Yeah, and it's another interesting thing too. We had Dr. Misty Peg-Tran on a couple of weeks ago, and she was talking all about biomimicry. And I think it's so incredible to think about Volta in the late 1700s and batteries. I mean, we use batteries in almost every single thing we do every single day.
It's crazy. Yeah. Yeah, they were using, him and Galvani were trying to figure out electricity back in the late 1700s. And even back from Greek times, people, like in ancient Greek times, people were using electric rays to try to cure headaches, to try to make your pain go away. They would place an electric ray on your head and try to numb you. They're called numb fish as well, right? So they would try to numb your pain by using an electric ray. So they've been a curiosity of ours for quite a time. And it really is nuts to think that they were probably some of the first inspiration for how we know primary batteries as they are now.
Wow, that's incredible. And can you tell us a little bit more about punting and kind of what you think the benefits to that are in some of these rays?
Yeah, so after the behavioral stuff happened, or after the behavioral studies, then I went into looking at their kinematics, because we would just see them just walking and punting or sort of hopping with those pelvic fins along the sandy bottom of the tanks, and hardly ever swimming. And we think it's just, you've got a massive pectoral girdle that's just filled with electric organ that's useless in terms of actually moving your body, right? So how can you even imagine? Maybe like your gut, right? A part of your body that's just filled with something that doesn't have muscle, that's not helping you move your body at all, and you just got to lug it around. So the pectoral fins are really compromised in terms of amount of muscle that they have now. And so it looks like they use that punting as a way to get themselves to the next spot on the ground. They don't it doesn't seem that they do a whole lot of water column swimming, if only to sort of get away from someone. Whenever you see, like if you Google or look up YouTube videos of these guys, like I've done excessively, you really see them swimming after they've been provoked, right? Like it is rare to see them swimming on their own and someone get a video of them just out of the blue start swimming, or that they've already been swimming. It's usually, oh, there's an electric ray, and then they start swimming. So I think it really is just an efficient way of moving, a kind of cumbersome body because of those organs. And it may also help with electroreception, where it's a way to kind of keep your body still as well, because we see other batoids do it too. It's not just the electric rays that do the punting thing. So a lot of other batoids that are benthic, anybody that's benthic seems to do that kind of punting, where the rest of the pectoral fin is kept still and they just move along. So that it may be a better way to sense your environment as well as you go along.
Who are their main predators?
Not much. So there's anecdotes of, we've seen people saying in white shark bellies that we've seen rays of similar size that aren't electric, but they've never seen electric rays in their bellies. So there really are very few predators for these guys. I mean, if not a white shark, then
And what?
what? Right?
Megalodon, that's about it.
Right.
Dr. Ekstrom, is there any evidence that these rays, I know Dr. Mickey asked a little bit about if there's evidence that they use the communication for mating. Do they use their electric charges to establish like territory at all? Is that something we've seen?
That's a great question. I have no idea. I have no idea. Somebody get on it out there. That's a great question.
Something for the aspiring marine biologists in the audience to tackle.
Yeah, what a fun question. That would be awesome.
Excellent. Well, we are starting to wrap up here, everyone, and I will let Dr. Ekstrom and Dr. Mickey kind of take us out, but I did just want to quickly mention to all, we're so happy that you were able to join us for these webinars, and if you're excited about talking about marine science, or particularly women in marine science, Ocean First Institute is going to be offering a number of virtual summer camps over the course of the summer. You can find more information about that either on our website or on our Facebook page. I'll be posting the link to our registration in the comments there. And so we will hopefully look forward to having more of these amazing conversations with some of those young aspiring marine biologists who can go out and answer all the questions that we're still wondering about. But thank you all so much for being here today. And I will let Dr. Mickey and Dr. Ekstrom kind of take us out.
Great. Well, I just, I would like to say, Dr. Ekstrom, thank you for taking time today to be with us. I know you're busy and you have family to take care of, so I'm so grateful for your time today and for sharing this amazing story of your research and your path. And I know you've had an incredible journey as a researcher and as a scientist, and you're such an inspiration to so many women in science, and certainly an inspiration to me. So I'm so thankful that you were able to make time for us today, and I loved hearing more about your research and what you're doing now. And yeah, thank you. I'll just turn it back over to you.
Thank you so much. This was so much fun. Thank my neighbor for socially distancing while watching my kids outside. Thank you, Mickey. Thank you, Isla. Thank you, everybody, for fantastic questions. And don't worry if you don't think your path is known yet. It'll show up. You'll figure it out. No path is straight. Don't believe it if people say it is. Just keep going. It'll show up.
That's great. Well, great advice, and so true. I think all of us have had a very interesting journey along the way. So thanks again for joining us, everybody. Have a wonderful day, and we'll see you again very soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.